So what is price discrimination actually about? Price discrimination is about selling the same or very, very similar product at different prices to different people. So some people can buy cheaper, whereas others have to pay more. And the difference in the price is not justified or not entirely justified by the quality of the thing that they buy or the costs that the producer incurs while producing. What is the reason for price discrimination? Well, the reason is that producers try in this way to increase their revenues. And obviously, there ain't no such thing as a free lunch. There ain't no such thing as a free price discrimination. Price discrimination is additional cost to the producer, right? To organize price discrimination means you spend additional money. But if you get also additional revenue, then it is possible that you will have actually additional profit from this kind of business operation. So we could say the primary reason that always works for discrimination is increase in revenues. But this is obviously performed in order to increase profits. Remember that in order to use price discrimination, you need to have a high market power. Therefore, you need to have a high level of control over your price. Price discrimination is something that you will not see in perfect competition market. It's more typical for oligopolistic markets or monopolistic markets. And there are 3 degrees of price discrimination, you could say 3 types or 3 techniques. The first degree price discrimination is sometimes called perfect price discrimination. What is this perfect price discrimination about? It's about selling products to different people at different prices, but in the way that each and every buyer gets the individual price, the price that is individually tailored to this person. This kind of perfect price discrimination allows you to capture the whole complete consumer surplus. So you do not leave any money in the pockets of your customers. This kind of price discrimination is very difficult to organize, and it is quite costly. And as anything that is perfect, it does not really exist. But we could find some examples, right? The favorite American example, because the American reality is slightly different from the, let's say, European reality. The American example would be, imagine a doctor in a small town. Just a normal doctor, GP, right? And there are many people who come for examination, for some advice. And actually the question is how much the doctor should charge them. And you know, the doctor who lives in a small town, he knows his patients. Therefore, he knows that there is some person that, let's say, owns a very successful business. That is a very rich person. And there is, let's say, a lady that works part-time in the library and has got 3 kids and is a single mother. And obviously this person is in much more difficult financial situation. So it wouldn't be surprising if the doctor would individually price his medical advice using absolutely different price for this successful business owner and for this relatively poor mother of 3 kids, right? Remember that this doctor advice is in the sense specific that the marginal cost of medical advice is not high. Therefore, actually, the cost of the service does not create the price. It's not that you need to charge quite a lot to cover your costs. The costs are pretty small. So the doctor could charge very little price, but obviously he also wants to make a business out of his practice. Therefore, he would charge this little price, small price, only to this lady. But if people are more wealthy, they can afford to pay a higher price. Why wouldn't they? Okay, so this kind of doctor may try to use this perfect or first-degree price discrimination. A similar case is the case of pedigree dog puppies, right? There are people who grow puppies, like let's say German shepherds, right? And they sell it then to people, and it is always the question of how much a single person would pay, right? And obviously, puppies are not standardized. Okay, so you can always say, well, this one would cost you more because actually this better one with better color or better shape or better character or whatever, right? So this is another situation when someone can try to individually tailor the price. And I used to know such a person who was having pedigree dog puppies, and he always said to me, I value those puppies, well, on one hand, according to their real value, how good dogs they are, how pretty they are, and so on and so forth. But on the other hand, he said, I always have a look at the car of the buyer. And that is pretty clever. I mean, rich people usually have bigger, better, more expensive cars. So if they are richer, they can actually pay more for the dog, right? And if you are poor and your car suggests that you might be poor, then you wouldn't pay that much. So this is how in real life this first-degree price discrimination can be tried to achieve, right? It's never that good, it's never perfect, but you may try to tailor the prices individually. If you do so, this is the first-degree price discrimination at work. So let's have a look at some graphs. You can see the demand, marginal revenue, and marginal cost. So normally, you would produce QM and you would sell it at PM price. So this is normally the money that you would gain in the form of your revenue if you use first-degree price discrimination, the perfect one, okay? Then you grab the whole consumer surplus at the price of increased cost, obviously, right? So this is not costless, this operation of grabbing this consumer surplus. But if it's big enough, then it's worthwhile, okay? So that offers you additional revenues, and additional profit is also possible. Another version, another possibility here, you can try to you can look at this graph here, and this is quantity for the monopolistic supply and monopolistic price. And what you could actually do, if you can sell at different prices to different people, if it is possible to use the price that is not a uniform price, then you could actually produce more than QM, because that would be like in perfect competition. You may increase your production until marginal cost is equal to the price, all right? Because you can produce additional units if the price covers your marginal cost. It gives you additional profit. So actually, you could produce as much as here, where marginal cost is equal to the price. So you sell as much as you would sell under perfect competition. That's an interesting case, right? And obviously, by price discrimination, you would grab this consumer surplus, right? So as you can see, you can actually get a huge benefit from price discrimination. That's why price discrimination may be so attractive, okay? The second degree price discrimination is also known as non-linear pricing. And this is what you can see in wholesaling business, for instance. The more you buy, the more attractive price you get. So this kind of price discrimination would be based on quantity that you buy. So different people would get different prices, but if you look at two people that want to get the same quantity, they will get the same price. The price is linked with the quantity that you buy. And this is not perfect price discrimination, therefore it allows you to capture only part of the consumer surplus, right? So that's not the whole, like in the previous way of price discriminating. Here you get just a part. But obviously the costs are smaller. I mean, it is easier to organize second degree price discrimination. This nonlinear pricing or second degree price discrimination is quite popular. It is easy to organize. You can usually see it in all those cases where the payment that you make is made of two different positions, like two different payments, the kind of fixed payment and the variable payment. So you pay because of the transaction, there is a certain fee here, and you pay for how much you buy, and this is another fee here, right? So this is how it is done. You can see this nonlinear pricing in action. Have a look at the slide here. This is a fragment, an element of a price list for some energy supplier in Poland. And I can show you the cases of two different users. So this is the first user. This is the electricity consumption at daily pricing, because well, the electricity is sold at different prices during the day and during the night. But let's use daily pricing here. So you can see that if the first user uses 40 units monthly, so that would be the net cost, and if you add the value added tax, then this is the gross value, and if you divide the payment, the gross value, by the quantity the user number one uses, that's 40, remember, then you get the average price per 1 unit of electricity, right? So this is the price for the first user. When you look at the second user uses 10 times more of energy, so pays more, and this is the net value, right? Then you've got the gross value, and if you divide this gross value by 400, which was the consumption, then you get the average price, and you can see this price is considerably smaller. Why is it so? Because there is this 6.43 number in both cases. When you buy electricity, you pay a fixed payment plus the variable payment that depends on how much you consume. And obviously, if you consume just a little, then this fixed payment would have a big impact on your price. If you consume a lot, then this fixed payment would be dispersed like average fixed cost. right? It would be dispersed over the units that you consume, therefore the price for you is smaller. So here you can see, right? Price discrimination of the second degree, nonlinear pricing, higher price for those who buy a little, lower price for those who buy a lot. This is how it's done, okay? So the rules may be obviously in practice more complicated. So it could be more than one fixed payment. The variable payment can be more complicated, right? It applies in many cases to phone calls or electricity, wholesaling purchase, and many other aspects of our life. But whenever you see that the money that you have to pay actually consists of two different positions, one of them is fixed. So no matter how much you buy, you will pay this fixed amount. And then, depending on how much you buy, you will pay another part of your payment. So this is certainly non-linear pricing. You are subject to the second degree price discrimination. For the third degree price discrimination, we do not use tailored prices, individually tailored to people. We do not link prices with the quantity, but instead we use some kind of classes of customers. This comes from the marketing idea of market segmentation, right? So we divide the market into segments. Usually for simplicity reasons and also to keep the cost of this kind of price discrimination pretty low, we create two classes. And those classes are usually based on some clearly specified or a bit hidden criterion. In most cases, this is the criterion of income. So in most cases, we divide the market into two classes, people of greater income and of smaller income. So we've got different prices for different people, but within the same class, we've got always the same price. How do we create such classes? All discount tickets are based on this idea. If you look at the discount tickets for buses or in the movies, discount tickets are for kids, young people, students, pensioner, people who retired, people who are disabled. What all those groups would have in common? Well, quite naturally, their income is probably quite limited. That applies to kids, depending on pocket money or money from parents. The same happens to students, right? Even though students may be working part-time, but again, working part-time doesn't give you a lot of money, right? Pensioners, people who are retired, are usually not that rich. I mean, their pension is lower than the salary that people get in most cases. Then disabled people who have more difficult situation in the labor market usually, right? So they also are expected to get lower income, right? So this is the class of this lower income, and they are offered cheaper tickets, right? When it comes to, let's say, normal people, I mean, people that we may expect they have income big enough to pay us more, okay? So this is one example. Apex tickets, right? Tickets for planes that are quite limited when it comes to some qualities. Like, for instance, you need to book them in advance. You cannot change the time of your flight, or you have to stay at least 7 days in your destination, or you need to stay over Saturday, so during the weekend, right? This kind of tickets tend to be cheaper. Or you can think of scientific journals, for instance. They are sold at a different price to different entities, right? So when you subscribe a certain scientific journal, you are offered a certain price. But if your university library wants to subscribe to the same journal, their price would be much higher. Okay? Because university can probably afford to pay more than single individual researcher. Therefore, researchers are offered lower prices and universities are offered higher prices. You can actually focus on planes again. This is not only Apex tickets, but also business class and economy class. You know, this is another example of third-degree price discrimination. And actually, I want to focus on business and economy class to show you the mechanics that is behind this third-degree price discrimination. But before we continue, a little bit of mathematics coming here in this slide. So let's start with profit maximization rule, right? Marginal revenue must be equal to marginal cost. What is actually marginal revenue? Marginal revenue was defined as the first derivative of total revenue with respect to quantity, as you can see here. What is total revenue? Total revenue is P, the price at which we sell, times Q, the quantity that we sell. This is obviously quantity demanded. So we see that there is a link between the price and the quantity, because if the price is bigger, the quantity will be smaller. People would buy less. If the price is smaller, quantity will be bigger because people would buy more. Those two variables are linked. So when we want to calculate the first derivative of total revenue, we actually need to calculate the first derivative of P with respect to Q and multiply times Q plus the first function, which is P, times the first derivative of Q with respect to Q. This is how we calculate derivative for two functions that are multiplied. P is a function, Q is a function, they are multiplied. So you take the derivative of the first one times the second function plus the first function multiplied by the derivative of the second function. This is what we have. Then we can put some order into those elements. We can make transformation that allows us to make this bracket here. And we make this bracket because actually what we have in this bracket is kind of familiar. It's very similar to the formula for price elasticity of demand. This is the formula. You see the similarity here, right? In fact, what we have in this bracket here is the reversed price elasticity of demand. In other words, it's 1 over the price elasticity of demand. So we could rewrite this formula into something like that. So we would say marginal revenue is linked to the price, and it is also linked to price elasticity of demand in this expression here in the brackets. As we said, marginal revenue must be equal to marginal cost if we maximize the profit. So in the profit maximization situation, you could replace marginal revenue here by marginal cost, showing that there is a relation between marginal cost and the price. Or we could make the last final transformation to get P on one side and the rest of the world on the other side, on the right side. And then it would tell you to what extent and how the price depends on two elements, marginal cost and price elasticity of demand. So these are two elements that would shape the price, that would tell you how to shape, how to set the price if you want to maximize the profit. Because this is all based on our assumption that we want to maximize the profit. Okay? So the price would depend on marginal cost and on something that is called a markup pricing under monopoly. And you can see it very clearly that it works. It works for all markets, including perfect competition market, in fact. Because in perfect competition market, you've got demand that is horizontal. That would mean it is perfectly elastic. That would mean that the elasticity of demand, of this demand, is infinity. 1 over infinity is 0. 1 plus 0 is 1. 1 over 1 is 1. So you reduce this whole equation to P equals MC, which was actually the condition for profit maximization in perfect competition markets. So as you can see, it works for any market. Okay, now that we know how markup pricing works, let's go back to market segments and let's consider two different classes of plane tickets. So there are two classes, like economy class and business class, and there are two different price elasticities, two different levels of sensitivity to price in the economy class and in the business class. So economy class is more for ordinary people with supposedly lower income and hence greater sensitivity to price. Business class is meant for not only businessmen, obviously, but generally for richer people, for people whose income is quite high, therefore they may be willing, they may afford to pay more for their ticket. We assume that the elasticity in the economy class is greater than the elasticity in business class. That seems only logical because sensitivity of poorer people would be greater. Now let's remember our relation between the price and the marginal cost and price elasticity of demand. If you put a bigger and a smaller price elasticity of demand in this formula, you will see that economy class should be cheaper than business class. It is the result of actually putting the value of the elasticity in this formula. So if the elasticity is greater for economy class, the price would be smaller. If the elasticity in business class is smaller, the price for business class would be greater. How much so? Well, let's imagine, for instance, that this price elasticity of demand for economy class is 5, and for business class is 1.25. It's negative, obviously. So this markup factor would be 1.25 for economy class, and it would be 5 for business class. It's enough if you put the elasticities in the formula and you calculate. Now, what is the marginal cost of taking one passenger from the economy class or business class? Is this marginal cost the same? It's similar, but it's not the same. I mean, it is equally costly to transport this and that person on board of the same plane. But obviously, if you have a business class ticket, you can enjoy more benefits. So this marginal cost will be bigger. So let's assume that the marginal cost of flying economy class from Brussels to Warsaw is, let's say, 600 Polish zloty, and being in business class, well, this marginal cost is bigger, let it be 800 zloty. But if you apply this markup pricing to marginal costs, then you would see that the ticket in the economy class would cost 750, but for business class, that would be 4,000. And indeed, this kind of difference between the prices, economy class and business class, on the route between Brussels and Warsaw is a real live data that I took one day from the internet. You could book a ticket in the economy class at 750 or business class 4,000. The same route from Brussels to Warsaw. Okay, so this is how it works, basically. The summary for price discrimination. There are various techniques, various usefulness, and various application of price discrimination, but the goal is always the same. The goal is to capture part, or possibly the whole, consumer surplus in order to increase revenues. Every time when you use price discrimination, some additional costs would apply. So you need to watch whether those additional costs are not greater than additional benefits in the form of the revenue, right? But if you see that your additional revenue is greater than additional cost, then you might using price discrimination. One of the dangers for a price discriminating business is the possibility of trading between the segments. So if, for instance, I am allowed to buy something cheaper, I could try to resell it to someone who hasn't got this right. This will not happen in the business class and economy class. But if you look at price discrimination, when some drugs are priced, okay, there are pharmaceutical businesses that sell the same medication to different countries at different prices. So it is possible that people would buy cheaper drugs, cheaper medication in one country and move it to another country. This is pretty likely. This is what's been actually happening, right? So this is one important thing. The other thing is that obviously price discrimination is illegal, like any other discrimination. It is illegal in the sense that you cannot discriminate people. But on the other hand, it is very difficult to be proven. I mean, look at the cinema tickets. Now that we know what we know, we wouldn't say there are discount tickets and normal tickets. There are tickets for students and kids and pensioners, and those tickets certainly cover all the costs. So these are normal tickets, and there are other tickets, there are special tickets, much more pricey for those who can afford it, right? So normal tickets, no, they are not normal tickets. These are, people who actually additionally contribute to the wealth of a business owner, like cinema owner, okay? But you can see that every cinema sells those tickets saying, no, we do not discriminate anyone. We do not discriminate Professor Ziemba because he's got high income. No, that's not how it works. These are normal prices for people like Mr. Ziemba, and there are smaller prices for people in need. So we made them, pay less, even if it's bad for our business, but we want all those people, children, pensioners to be able to enjoy our movies, right? So this is how it is sold to the public. This is how it is sold to the market. But remember, this is price discrimination. Simply charge more people who can afford it. You do not allow them to buy using such nice price as other people can. Okay, that's it.